I'm Tanya. I'm 32. And if you asked me a year ago, I would have told you I had everything under control. A husband, 2 kids, a steady job. From the outside, it probably looked like I was living the dream. But the truth is, I was suffocating, trapped in a life that felt more like something I settled for than something I chose. It started with a thought, just a flicker at first, the kind you try to push away. But it kept coming back, louder each time. This can't be it. This can't be all there is for me. And once that seed was planted, it didn't take long before I started looking for a way out. Not a dramatic exit. Not a middle-of-the-night suitcase kind of escape. I needed a plan. A smart one. One that wouldn't leave me broke and scrambling to feed my kids. That's when the idea hit me. And it felt genius. If I could go back to school, specialize in a higher-paying field of nursing, I'd finally have the independence I needed. And Bruce? Well, he wouldn't even question it. He'd think I was just pursuing a better future for our family. He wouldn't see it for what it really was, my ticket out. So I told him I wanted to move from working with moms and newborns into oncology nursing. It wasn't a total lie. The pay is better, and it is more specialized. But what I left out was that I'd already decided I didn't want to be married to him anymore. I just didn't have the means to leave. Not yet. I knew how this story usually went. I'd seen women walk away from their marriages and end up couch hopping, moving, back in with their parents, or drowning under bills they couldn't pay. I couldn't let that happen to me. I refused to be another woman barely holding it together while working herself into the ground. I needed to be strategic, careful. And if that meant keeping Bruce in the dark for a little while longer, then so be it. When I brought up the idea of cutting back my hours at the hospital so I could focus on school, Bruce didn't even flinch. He said, "Whatever you need, honey, I've got us." Just like that. It almost felt too easy. He picked up extra shifts, took on more of the household expenses, handled the kids when I had to study late. And every time he stepped up, every time he told me how proud he was of me, I felt this twist in my stomach, because he thought he was helping build our future. But I already knew I wasn't going to be in it. There were moments I felt guilty. Watching him drag himself through back-to-back shifts just so I could chase my dreams, it wasn't lost on me how much he was giving. But then I'd think about the long nights I spent lying awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was disappearing in my own life, like the walls were closing in and no one noticed, not even him. I started calling it the plan. Finish school, land a better job, file for divorce, 2 years tops. I even ran the numbers. Between my expected salary and child support, I'd be better off financially than I was while married. It wasn't just about freedom. It was about security, control, survival. I opened a separate savings account. Nothing huge, just small deposits here and there from my reduced paychecks. Bruce never questioned it. That money? It was my cushion, my escape fund. I didn't think of it as lying. I thought of it as preparing. Because when it came down to it, I knew no one was going to look out for me the way I had to look out for myself. The more he gave, the more I pulled back emotionally. But on the outside, I played the role perfectly. Woke up early, made breakfast, packed the boys' lunches, asked Bruce about his day like I actually cared about his answer, smiled, nodded, took pictures with my textbooks and posted them with captions like, "Grateful for my amazing husband who makes this all possible." I was winning Oscars in my own life. But inside, I was counting down the days. Every "I love you" felt heavier. Every kiss goodbye felt like a small betrayal. And yet, what was I supposed to do? Blow everything up before I had a safety net? That wouldn't just hurt me. That would hurt my kids too. No, this way was cleaner, safer, smarter. Bruce's mom used to gush about how proud she was of me, about how lucky I was to have such a supportive man. I'd smile, say all the right things, and think, if you only knew. He wasn't just supporting me, he was unknowingly funding my independence. The irony was almost poetic. At the hospital, there was a group of women I'd started hanging out with. Nurses, mostly. Some divorced, some thinking about it. We'd grab drinks after shifts and swap stories. The messes, the regrets, the recoveries. I soaked it all in. Every cautionary tale only made me feel more confident in my plan. I wasn't going to be like Sarah from pediatrics, who had to share custody with a man she couldn't stand while living in a one-bedroom apartment. I wasn't going to be like Jessica from the ER, stuck with legal fees and barely scraping by. I was going to be the woman who thought ahead, who landed on her feet. By month 6 of school, I started dropping little hints to Bruce, just in case I ever needed to show that. Our marriage had been rocky for a while. Nothing dramatic. Just casual comments like, I feel like we've been growing apart lately, or I'm starting to figure out who I really am. He always responded the same way. Hugged me. Said he was proud of me. Told me he'd support me no matter what. He never realized I was already halfway out the door. Only one person knew the truth. My friend Chloe. She called my savings account the Liberation Fund. Said I was brilliant. That I was doing what so many women wished they had the nerve to do. Planning my freedom instead of waiting around for permission. It made me feel powerful. Like I wasn't just escaping. I was taking control. Every time I looked at Bruce and thought, he has no idea. It gave me this weird thrill. Not because I enjoyed lying, but because for once, I wasn't just reacting to life. I was directing it. I was writing the script, and I was getting closer to the ending I wanted. The boys were doing fine. Bruce was doing fine. On paper, we were the perfect family. But I knew the truth. And every time I tucked that knowledge away behind a smile, it reminded me why I had to keep going. I didn't want to hurt him. I really didn't. But I wanted to live. Fully. Freely. And if that meant being the villain in someone else's story, for a little while, then I'd wear that label quietly. As long as it got me where I needed to go. Because when you've spent years pretending, there's something intoxicating about finally having a plan. About knowing that freedom is just a few smart moves away. And at that point, I really believed no one would see it coming. The thing about living a double life is that after a while, it starts to feel normal. That's what surprised me most. How easily I fell into the rhythm of pretending. Pretending to be the happy wife, the grateful mother, the woman chasing her dreams with a man who supported her every step of the way. On the surface, everything looked perfect. I made sure of that. I woke up early, made breakfast for the kids, packed lunches like I always did. I greeted Bruce with a smile, asked about his day, kissed him goodnight. I played my part so well I sometimes wondered if even I believed it. But inside, I was just counting down the days. Every time Bruce told me he was proud of me, I felt this awful twist in my chest. Because I knew he meant it. He was proud. He thought we were building something. Together. He had no idea that I had already chosen a life without him in it. That I was laying the groundwork for a future where he'd be a memory, not a partner. And the worst part? He was so good to me. Too good. He started doing more around the house without me even asking. Cooking dinner on the nights I had class, helping the boys with their homework, folding laundry. He even took on extra shifts so I wouldn't have to worry about money while I focused on school. I should have felt grateful. I should have felt lucky. But all I felt was guilt. And this weird sort of detachment. Like the more he did, the further I drifted. It wasn't that I didn't see his efforts. I saw them. And I appreciated them in my own quiet, twisted way. but I also knew they weren't going to change anything. Because deep down, I had already made my decision. I wasn't staying. No matter how much he tried, it was too late. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I wasn't hurting anyone, that all of this, the lies, the act, the secret, bank account, was necessary. I needed to survive. I needed to secure my future. And if that meant keeping up appearances for a little longer, then that's what I had to do. Besides, it wasn't like I was being cruel. I wasn't yelling or cheating or making Bruce's life miserable. If anything, I was being the best version of myself. On the outside. I posted photos of my study notes with captions like, "So thankful for my amazing husband who makes this possible." And people loved it. I got all these likes and comments from women saying how lucky I was, how inspiring my journey was. No one had a clue. In some twisted way, it made me feel powerful. Like I was writing my own story, playing everyone around me like they were extras in my movie. But it also made me feel alone, isolated in this secret that no one else could see, except Chloe. She was the only person who knew the truth. And even then, I didn't tell her everything right away, just bits and pieces, little confessions over coffee or late-night texts. Eventually, I told her everything, the plan, the timeline, the money I was setting aside. She didn't judge me. In fact, she called me brilliant, said I was doing what most women were too scared to do, take control. She even started calling it my liberation fund instead of a savings account. Said it sounded more empowering that way, and I let myself believe it. Because it was easier than admitting the truth, that I was manipulating a man who genuinely loved me. It got harder to fake it when Bruce started talking about our future. He'd make these casual comments about taking a trip once I finished school, or how we could finally start saving for a bigger house now that I was working toward a better salary. I'd smile and nod, say things like, "That sounds great," while my mind wandered to lease agreements and divorce paperwork. Sometimes I wondered if he could tell, if there were little moments where the mask slipped, where he caught a flicker of something in my eyes and just didn't say anything. But he never pushed. He just kept showing up, supporting me, loving me, and the more he loved me, the more I pulled away. There were times I avoided his touch because it felt too fake, too close, like letting him hold me would somehow undo all the work I'd put into preparing for my exit. I started blaming everything on school. The distance, the exhaustion, the lack of affection. And technically, I wasn't lying. Juggling nursing school, parenting, and keeping up this facade was exhausting. But that wasn't the full story, and we both knew it. Still, Bruce never pushed. He just took my word for it and kept trying. He'd bring me coffee when I was studying late, surprise me with little snacks he knew I liked, take the kids out so I could have quiet time to work. Things that probably would have made me melt a year ago. But now, they just made me feel worse, because I didn't want to feel grateful. I wanted to feel right, justified, strong. So I started picking at him. Little things that never used to bother me suddenly became unbearable. The way he loaded the dishwasher wrong, or how he fell asleep on the couch instead of coming to bed. I kept a mental list of all the things he did that irritated me, just to remind myself why I was doing this, why I had to keep going. Because there were moments, brief ones, where I'd start to doubt myself, where I'd wonder, what if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm throwing away something good? But then I'd remember all the years I spent feeling invisible. All the times I tried to explain how unhappy I was, and Bruce just missed it. He thought taking me out to dinner or watching a movie would solve everything. He never really heard me, so no, I wasn't crazy, I wasn't heartless, I was just done. And if he hadn't realized that by now, that wasn't my problem. Around that time, Bruce started talking about having another baby after I graduated. said he was falling in love with me all over again, watching me chase my goals. That maybe we could start fresh, a new chapter. I smiled at him and felt my stomach turn, not because I was scared, but because it proved how little he actually knew me. He thought we were getting stronger, that all of this sacrifice and effort was bringing us closer. And I knew, without a doubt, that I was slipping further away with every passing day. By then, I was completely immersed in my double life. The secrecy, the strategy, the quiet planning, it all started to feel like a mission. Like I was orchestrating this beautiful escape, and no one could stop me. I felt powerful, in control, almost untouchable. And maybe that's when things started to unravel, because I got too comfortable. But in those days, in that carefully constructed space between who I was and who I was becoming, I believed I had it all figured out. That if I just kept going, kept playing the role a little while longer, I'd get everything I wanted. I had no idea how fast it could all fall apart. There's this thing that happens when you live in two versions of yourself long enough. Eventually, the lines start to blur. And then, they start to crack. At first, I thought I had it under control. I was balancing everything. School, the kids, the house, Bruce. I kept the routine tight, the excuses consistent, the story believable. I had made peace with the guilt. I told myself I was doing what I had to do, that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just protecting my future. But the truth is, the act started to wear thin. Not in big ways at first, just tiny little slips, expressions I didn't catch in time, cold responses I forgot to soften, moments where I stopped pretending long enough for Bruce to notice. Something. He didn't say much, at least not right away, but I could feel it. His glances were different, longer, quieter, like he was trying to read something in my face that I wasn't ready for him to see. And instead of pulling it together, I got sloppy. It wasn't even on purpose. I was just tired, not from school, though that was draining too, but from holding everything in, from constantly being 2 steps ahead, planning every interaction, every smile, every lie. I was starting to trip over myself. One night, Bruce came home with my favorite coffee. I'd been studying for an exam, and he thought it would help. And instead of thanking him, I barely looked up. I muttered something like, "Thanks," and kept typing. I saw his face fall, but I didn't fix it. I couldn't. I didn't have the energy to play nice. That was one of the first moments I saw it hit him, that maybe something was off. But he didn't push. He just kissed the top of my head and said, "You're working so hard. I'm proud of you." And I wanted to cry. Not because I felt bad for him, but because I wished he would stop being so good to me. It would have been easier if he were cruel or distant, but he wasn't. He was present, loving, supportive, everything I was pretending to be, and it only made the weight of what I was doing heavier. Chloe noticed the shift too. We'd been talking less. Not because anything was wrong between us, but because she was starting to get uncomfortable with how far things were going. I'd tell her updates about how much money I had saved, or how I was planning to time the move right after certification. And instead of hyping me up like she used to, she'd just nod or ask, "Are you still sure about this?" It started to annoy me. I didn't need doubt. I needed a cheerleader. I needed her to remind me that this was smart, not selfish, that I was planning, not betraying. But she wasn't so sure anymore. One afternoon, we grabbed coffee after class, and out of nowhere she said, "Have you ever thought about just being honest with him? Not about the whole thing, but maybe tell him you're unhappy?" I just stared at her for a second, trying to figure out if she was serious. And when I realized she was, I snapped, "You think I haven't tried that?" Because I had tried. Years ago. I told Bruce I wasn't happy. I told him I felt stuck, that I needed more, and he just said, "We all go through rough patches." Or, "Maybe we should plan a date night." That was his solution. Movie tickets and takeout. Like that would magically fix the ache I couldn't even explain. So no, I wasn't going to have that conversation again. Not when I was this close to being free. Not when I'd sacrificed this much already. But I think Chloe's guilt was starting to catch up with her. Maybe it wasn't fun anymore to be part of my secret. Maybe now it just felt like watching a car accident in slow motion. At home, the boys were acting up more than usual, fighting, getting in trouble at school. Their teachers said they seemed distracted, frustrated. I blamed it on the change in my schedule. Bruce did too. He suggested maybe I take one less class to be more present. I shot that down so fast it shocked even me. I said, "This is temporary. They'll adjust." What I meant was, I'm not slowing down now. I'm too close. But it got to me, more than I let on. Watching my kids unravel while I was playing the long game. It didn't sit right. But what was I supposed to do? Stay for their comfort and give up my freedom? That didn't feel fair either. Bruce, on the other hand, started trying harder. I think he could sense something, even if he didn't know what. He started planning little family outings, making dinner on the weekends. He even arranged for his mom to take the boys one night so we could have a date night at home. He lit candles, cooked my favorite meal, put on music. I couldn't even look him in the eye. I pretended to be tired, said I had a headache, ate in silence and went to bed early. He didn't argue. He just cleaned up, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed next to me like everything was fine, and that made it worse. Because part of me wanted to scream, "Don't you see me slipping away? Don't you feel how far I've gone?" But he didn't. Or maybe he did. And just didn't want to face it. Around that time, he started doing this thing, talking about the future like it was set in stone, like it was this beautiful, shared thing we were both working toward. He'd say stuff like, "Imagine when you're finally done with school. Maybe we could take the kids to the beach, celebrate everything we've been through. Or, I've been thinking, once you're certified, maybe we could start looking at houses again." And I'd smile and nod and die a little inside. Because every time he said we, all I could hear was me, my life, my future, without him. I tried to bury the guilt, but it kept finding its way back in. Every time he kissed me goodnight, every time the kids hugged me after school, every time I checked my savings account and calculated how close I was to finally making my move, there it was. That sharp little pang of doubt, of guilt, of wondering if I was really the villain here. I even started keeping a list, not written down, just in my head. All the little things Bruce did that annoyed me. The way he loaded the dishwasher wrong. How he left socks on the floor. The way he'd hum while brushing his teeth. Tiny, ridiculous things that never used to matter, but now felt like ammunition. Because when he was being too kind, too generous, too loving, I needed something to pull me back, something to remind me why I was leaving, why I couldn't stay. And then, out of nowhere, he dropped the baby comment. We were lying in bed, not talking, just scrolling on our phones. And he turned to me and said, "You know, seeing you chase your dreams, it makes me love you even more. Maybe after you graduate we could try for another baby." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because what do you say to a man who's dreaming about expanding a future you've already decided to leave behind? That moment haunted me, not because I felt bad about lying, but because it showed me how little he really understood what was happening, how far apart we already were. He thought we were healing, rebuilding, and I was already packing up our life in my mind. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how much longer I could keep doing this. Because the cracks in the act weren't just showing, they were widening, and I had no idea how much longer the facade could hold. Everything was almost lined up. 4 months out from graduation, and I could practically see the finish line. My savings were nearly there. I'd already started scouting apartments. I even had a mental checklist for when and how to file for divorce. The plan was working, better than I could have imagined, and I was proud of it. Not in a cold or malicious way, just proud that I had held it all together this long. That I was getting close to finally stepping into the life I wanted without the chaos and desperation that usually comes with it. It didn't even feel dishonest anymore. It just felt like strategy, like survival. Bruce had no clue, and that was the way it had to be. Until I was ready, I needed him on board. Still. Working those extra shifts, still covering the bills, still playing the supportive husband. I told myself it was temporary, that in the end, he'd understand. Maybe even be grateful that I didn't just blow things up without a plan. But I wasn't as careful as I should have been. I let myself get too comfortable. That day started like any other. Chloe came over after class. We were sitting in the kitchen talking while I sorted laundry, just catching up. I hadn't seen her in a while because things had gotten busier for both of us, but I remember feeling giddy that afternoon, like I could finally breathe. I was excited, so close to being done, so close to freedom, and I let that excitement show. Chloe asked me how things were going, and I just opened up. Told her I'd almost hit my savings goal. That once I landed the oncology position, I'd be set. No more pretending. No more secret smiles and fake kisses. I could finally walk away with my head held high, financially stable, emotionally ready, no begging or struggling involved. I even joked that Bruce was basically funding his own heartbreak without realizing it. I said it with a laugh, like it was clever, like I was outsmarting the system. I didn't think twice. It was just Chloe and me, like always. I forgot to keep my voice down. I wasn't careful. I should have been. Because what I didn't know was that Bruce had come home early. His shift ended sooner than usual, some scheduling thing at work, and I didn't hear the front door. But I did hear it close, quietly. Not a slam, not even loud. Just shut. And then the soft clink of keys on the hallway table. That sound hit me like a punch to the stomach. In that moment, I just knew. Something in my gut told me he had heard everything. Or enough. And I remember freezing, looking at Chloe, and she must have seen my face go pale because she went completely silent. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Just listened. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he hadn't heard much. Maybe he thought we were talking about something else. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was probably fine. But I didn't believe that. Not really. I walked into the living room, pretending everything was normal. And there he was. Just standing there, still holding his jacket, eyes locked on me like I was someone he'd never met before. He wasn't yelling. He didn't look angry. He looked blank, like something had shut off inside him. I asked if everything was okay, and he said the boys were staying at my mom's, right? I nodded. Then he said we should talk after Chloe left. That was it. His voice didn't even waver. Just flat. Unreadable. I walked back into the kitchen and sat down, pretending to finish folding laundry, but my heart was pounding. Chloe could tell something was really wrong. She whispered, Did he hear us? And I just shrugged because I didn't know what else to say. She left not long after that, gave me this awkward hug and said, "Call me if you need anything." But I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the regret, the panic. When I went upstairs, Bruce was sitting on the edge of our bed, still fully dressed, just staring at the wall. I walked in slowly, trying to think of how to play it. Should I act confused? Should I pretend nothing happened? But I didn't get the chance. He said, "I heard everything." Just like that. No emotion. No hesitation. Like he was reading a script he'd already memorized. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. When I finally did, I said something pathetic like, "You don't understand. I was just venting. I didn't mean it like that." He didn't flinch, didn't respond, just stared ahead and said, "You've been lying to me. You've been planning to leave, while I've been working extra shifts and taking care of the boys and believing in you. You've been using me." I started crying. Not because I got caught, but because I realized I couldn't undo what had just happened. It was over. The curtain had dropped. The mask was gone. And he saw everything. I tried to explain that I was scared, that I didn't know how else to survive, that I didn't mean to hurt him. But he wouldn't hear it. He said, "I'm not angry. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore." That line, it shattered me. I expected rage. I expected yelling, maybe even threats. But this calm, steady ending, it felt worse. Because I couldn't spin it. I couldn't twist it into something I could control. He had made up his mind, and there was nothing I could do. That night, he moved into the guest room. Didn't say another word to me. Just gathered a few things and closed the door. The days that followed were a blur. He told me he was filing for divorce, that I should get a lawyer. He didn't scream. He didn't lash out. He just disconnected, like a switch had flipped. And suddenly, the man I had leaned on, the man who had carried so much of the load so I could chase a future without him, was gone. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't warm anymore either. Just cold, distant, untouchable, and I knew. I had broken something I couldn't fix. The boys started asking questions almost immediately. "Why is Daddy sleeping in the other room? Why are you guys so quiet?" I didn't know what to tell them. I just said we were going through something hard. But kids aren't dumb. They felt the shift, the silence, the tension. I went to class, went to clinicals, tried to pretend like I wasn't unraveling. But my grades started slipping. I couldn't focus. I'd stare at my textbook for hours and not remember a single word. Everything I'd worked for, the plan, the security, the clean exit, it was gone. Because Bruce had beat me to it. He left emotionally before I had the chance to leave physically. And in doing so, he took all the control I'd worked so hard to hold on to. And worst of all, I couldn't even blame him, because he heard the truth. Raw, unfiltered, and ugly. Straight from my own mouth. And now I had to live with the fallout. It's been 6 months since everything fell apart. 6 months since Bruce overheard that conversation in the kitchen. Since he stopped looking at me like I was someone he knew. And now, I'm sitting here alone. In a 1-bedroom apartment. On the edge of Houston, in a neighborhood I never imagined I'd live in, trying to figure out where it all went so wrong. Technically, I got what I wanted. I'm no longer married. I finished school. I passed my certification exam. And I've got a job. It's not the position I'd hoped for, and the pay isn't what I planned. But it's something. I'm on my own. I'm independent. I should feel proud. But I don't. The freedom I fought so hard to build feels empty. Because what I didn't count on, what no spreadsheet or timeline ever warned me about, was how much it would cost me to get here. The divorce went through faster than I expected. Bruce didn't fight me on anything. No drawn-out arguments, no messy battles over the kids or the house. He just let it happen. Gave me half of everything, agreed to joint custody, walked away, and somehow that made it worse. I thought I'd feel powerful, like I'd won. But instead, I felt like I'd lost something I didn't even realize I valued. The version of him that loved me without question. He didn't scream. He didn't insult me. He just stopped calling, stopped trying, stopped treating me like someone worth fighting for. And the silence? It cut deeper than any insult ever could. The boys are with me half the time. When they're here, I do everything I can to make things feel stable. We do homework, we eat frozen pizza on the couch, we try to laugh. But when they're gone, when they're with Bruce, the quiet is unbearable. And the truth? They love being with him. They come back talking about how he's teaching them guitar, how they cooked pancakes together, how his new apartment has a balcony where they watch the sunset. They talk about him like he's the cool parent, the one who's fun, the one who's whole. And I get it. He is doing great. He's lost weight. He dresses better. He's more present than he ever was when we were together. And he seems happy. Genuinely happy. Which I wasn't expecting. The man I thought would crumble without me didn't fall apart at all. He rebuilt. Quicker and cleaner than I ever imagined. And the version of Bruce I see now, at school pickups, at drop-offs, he's calm, polite, even kind, but distant. Like I'm a stranger. Or worse, a regret. And then there's the woman. I saw her for the first time at the boys' school carnival. She was standing next to him, holding cotton candy, smiling with the kids. Pretty in this simple, effortless kind of way. Natural. No drama. The kind of woman people just like without trying. The boys were holding her hands. I wanted to scream. Not because he moved on, but because he moved on so well. And I was standing there with my forced smile, my fake laugh, trying to act like I was fine. When inside, I felt like I was crumbling. I walked away before they saw me. I didn't want to cause a scene. I couldn't. Not there. Not with my kids around. But I cried the entire drive home. Everyone we used to know, they all sided with him. The mutual friends, the couples we used to do dinner with. I stopped getting invited to birthdays, game nights, cookouts. Word got around. I know Bruce told the truth, or enough of it, and people made their judgments. I became the cautionary Tanya, the woman who used her husband and got caught. Even at work, I feel it. I know people talk. Some of the nurses avoid eye contact. Others are friendly, but I can tell they're careful around me now, like I'm unpredictable, dangerous, toxic. Chloe? She vanished. After everything went down, she pulled away completely, said she regretted helping me, that she never should have supported the plan in the first place. She made it sound like the whole thing had been my idea, and she was just an innocent bystander. I was furious. But deep down, I think I was more hurt than anything. I needed her. I needed someone. And she left too. So now, it's just me. And dating? Don't even get me started. I tried. A few coffee dates. A dinner. But the moment I mention I'm divorced with 2 kids, still getting settled after a rough split, they vanish. Guys either want someone younger, someone without baggage, or someone whose life feels more put together. I don't feel put together. I feel like I'm patching holes every single day just to stay afloat. And it's not like I'm drowning, I'm surviving. I pay my bills, I take care of my kids, I show up to work. But that vision I had, Of freedom, of thriving, of being this strong, independent woman who finally built her own life. It hasn't happened. Not the way I imagined. Sometimes, late at night, I lie in bed and replay everything. I think about the conversations Bruce and I didn't have. The ones I avoided because I thought he wouldn't understand. The moments I chose silence instead of honesty. Strategy instead of vulnerability. Would it have changed anything? I don't know. But I can't pretend I didn't make choices that led us here. I can't pretend I didn't lie, or manipulate, or take advantage of someone who was trying, really, trying, to love me through it all. Do I regret it? That's complicated. I regret the fallout. I regret the pain it caused. I regret the way my kids look at me sometimes, like they're still waiting for things to go back to how they were. But the plan? The decision to leave? No. I don't regret wanting something more. I don't regret trying to build a life that felt like mine. I just wish I'd done it differently, braver, cleaner, without all the lies, because now I have the freedom I wanted. And it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like standing in a room I painted myself into, with no door left, open. Bruce didn't punish me. He didn't try to ruin me. He just walked away. And maybe that's what hurts most of all, that he let go so easily, while I'm still here trying to convince myself it was worth it. And maybe someday I'll feel like it was. Maybe in a year or two, when the dust finally settles, when the job gets better, when the boys adjust, maybe I'll feel stronger. Maybe I'll finally believe I did the right thing. But right now, it just feels like I lost more than I ever expected. And I don't know how long it'll take to feel whole again,